You're good. You're good, but you know how people try to sit in the way back. Hey, good morning, everyone. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we're going to be intentional about it. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We do not take for granted the gift of this day, and I am so excited to see you all for this important conversation we're going to have. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Michael Davis. I'm a member here at Second Baptist Church. I have the opportunity to serve in the deacon ministry. I also have, the distinct privilege and honor of serving as the Eastern Union Missionary Baptist Association Layman Auxiliary President. I had to practice all that, get it right. That's a lot, it's a mouthful. But as such, the opportunity to work with men and women, to work with community members all throughout Central Ohio. I also have the distinct honor of serving as the Religious Services Administrator for the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. And as such, deal with, work with our chaplains and ensure religious practice and faith-based initiatives for those who are incarcerated. They are still a part of our community. 95% of them are one day coming back to our community. And so with all of those sort of hats, I thought in these various experiences, we've seen the impact of crime and violence in our communities. We wrestle with it with individuals in their incarceration and their transition home. Part of this work, in my experience, has involved having fatherhood conferences inside of prisons to help men identify destructive behaviors that lead to ultimate barriers and challenges when they return home. And so domestic violence, relationships, how to navigate those things can be challenging during the period of incarceration and certainly when home. Brother Glenn Harris from the Ohio Domestic Violence Network has been the catalyst for discussions around how men, once they know better, can do better. And that's for men inside, and brothers, it's for us outside. We have to do better. We have to do better. This morning, we're going to learn and we're going to know so that we can do better. Our sisters in the audience, many of them who have, according to the statistics, been impacted by this specific topic, we are committing to do better, to know better, to do better. Nobody should be unsafe in their own home. And so it is with all of these ideas in mind that we've partnered with the City of Columbus, the Office of Violence Prevention, and its leadership to offer this opportunity to you this morning. A grant from the RX Foundation enabled us to provide breakfast this morning, so hope physically you're energized and ready for this courageous conversation. And so right now, I would like to just bring up to provide a welcome the pastor of the historic. This is the oldest African-American Baptist church in the city of Columbus. We're going to be celebrating our 190th year. And yes. When this church was started, slavery was operating in specific states in our country. And so we stand upon a legacy of those who pursued doing justice. And that's what today's about. And so I want to introduce to you the pastor of the Second Baptist Church. Not only is he pastor of this church, he is the moderator of the Eastern Union Missionary Baptist Association. He also is the president of the Congress for the Ohio General Baptist Convention, and that is none other than Dr. Howard T. Washington.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, for that introduction. I was like, ooh, okay, that's a lot. But I thank God for just the opportunity to serve here in this community, this church. I've served for 20 years now as pastor, and we're excited for what is going on here. But I am most excited about the conversation that's going to happen today. I'm most excited for the fact that we're not going to be silent anymore. There was once a phrase that said, "The silence is golden," and I want to say that silence is dangerous and can be deadly. And so while you're having the opportunity, we hope that you have felt welcome here. We hope that you've had some juice, some food. We thank our kitchen cabinet and our men and women who have served you today. We thank God for them. But we pray that you, amen, amen. We want to give them credit, amen. They got up early to be here. But we pray that you will be inspired to not only have this conversation about protecting our private spaces and our public spaces against violence, but you will actually have action steps where you can, from this place, begin to reduce violence, begin to prevent violence in our neighborhoods, in our homes, in our cities, in our communities, and in our churches. We thank God for your presence here. You are welcome. And I was looking, did the mayor make his way up? Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Davis. Thank you so much for being here. You're welcome.
Thank you, Pastor. Now I would like to introduce to you our key partner in this and person who paved the way for us this morning, and that is the Deputy Director of the Office of Violence Prevention, Dr. Joanne Lunsford. Please welcome her as she comes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. I have to take the microphone out. I'm not always a sit-still kind of person. So I was glad when they said unto me, "Come into the house of the Lord." So glad to be here. How many are happy to have woke up this morning in your right mind to talk about a subject that is so dear to our hearts? First, thanking Pastor and First Lady Washington, the Eastern Union Missionary Baptist Association, Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, Dr. Davis especially, the Office of Ohio Domestic Violence Network, and Glenn Harris. Thank you so much for hosting and coming up with a program that at one time we would not have had into a church. So how we have evolved for the better in the community is so showing right here in this audience today. Thanking my Office of Violence Prevention staff that is here today with all the hard work you've done. Unfortunately, Mayor, yes, thank you for him being able to make it to the breakfast part. Okay, the food ministry. Them grits was on. Thank you. The food was good, but them grits, I didn't even have to season them. Thank you so very much. And I see the Honorable Judge McIntosh here and so many elected and community leaders. And we just say thank you so much for allowing us to be here to share your space. Many of you may know or heard of the Office of Violence Prevention, but for those of you who have not, Mayor Andrew J. Ginther in 2022 declared gun violence a public health crisis here in the city of Columbus. And with that, he charged Columbus Public Health in finding out what that means in the city. And the Board of Health then, through all of the various research that happened, recommended to him that he create an Office of Violence Prevention, and so he did. In 2023, trying to make sure our work is evidence-based, trying to do the things that we can do to help prevent and reduce crime and homicides in the city of Columbus. And some of you may have known, the numbers are going down, and we're so very grateful to be a part of that. And so thank you so much for allowing us to come today. In 2025, Mayor charged us with assessing the domestic violence space here in the city and what we can do to help lessen domestic violence, create awareness and education campaign and things like that. We have our Domestic Violence and Victim Services coordinator here today, and she's going to talk to a little bit more about what that shows and what that means in the city of Columbus. But before you get to her, I'm going to excitedly introduce our assistant director who does that phenomenal work, assistant director for intervention who does all that phenomenal work in that intervention space, who will tell you a little bit more about today and what we're going on. And thanking you, and I just thank you so much for allowing us to be here, share your space, and be able to talk about such a topic that has such urgency, but has been taboo for too long. So Dr. Terrence Hinton, if you could join us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lunsford. Good morning, everybody. And as Dr. Lunsford said, I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of Violence Prevention. But my first love was always reentry, where assisting people who came out of the prison system and coming home. And so I kind of want to paint this picture and set the stage for you all about a reality that I see a lot of times with people coming out of the penitentiary system. So about a year back, I was working with an individual, and I'll just call him John, workforce development, helping him become employed. He had been gone 7 years, and I had the pleasure of meeting him and his girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, and their 2 children. He came straight home from prison, and instead of going into the halfway house, he went and moved back in with his girlfriend wife. So things are going well. He's excited to be back home. And particularly housing is one of those big barriers for people who have a criminal record. And everything is going fine for the first couple of weeks. And then one day, John comes in and he's shouting on the phone. And I kind of just sit back and just listen. And finally he gets off the phone. I said, "Brother, let's talk. What's going on?" And he says, "Man, having some problems at home. Me and my girl are beefing." I said, "Well, what's going on?" And he kind of paused, and he said, and all of a sudden, things started to come out. He said, "Well, first, the kids, they won't listen to me. I tell them to do their homework, and they disrespect me." Now, keep in mind, having a criminal record is like having a scarlet letter on your chest, and it's hard enough to go out and find things such as housing and employment. And so a lot of times, some of the people I work with, the one area where they find solace and comfort is at home. But now he's home, he's feeling disrespected. In his mind, he's the man of the house. And so he's trying to reinsert himself as an authoritative figure. And so I had to have this brief explanation to him, like, you know, you've been gone for 7 years. This is a process. You cannot just come back in and take over. You've been gone. This is a process. I have to admit, I was partially at fault here because I really didn't know the warning signs were there. He told me what was going on. I didn't know where to go and where to send him because most of the time housing is a problem. He's got that. And so to the world, he's good. He's got a job. We're working with him. But now, how do you reunify somebody back into the household? And so he's getting frustrated. The second time we had the same conversation, he's talking about wanting to move out. He's got to get out now. And unfortunately, what ended up happening the third time, he got into an altercation with a significant other, and he hit her, and he got sent back to prison. And that's a story that I bring up because it's something I still think about to this day. And the question is, that to me was 100% preventable. What if those resources were readily available to somebody like John? He would still be with his family. And so that's one of many situations. Domestic violence comes in many forms, but that's something I see pretty frequently in the reentry field. And so as y'all go through the presentation today and Glenn comes up and speaks, I just want to kind of paint you all this picture of individuals like John and what happens when you have that initial step in reunifying somebody with the family. How do you handle those conflicts so that we don't have those type of situations? Thank you all for being here this morning. And I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up Sarah now.
Good morning, everybody. I am incredibly grateful to be here, and I have the honor to follow the esteemed gentleman and Deputy Lunsford who spoke before me. So no pressure, right? As Dr. Hinton stated, my name is Sarah Galoni. I'm the Domestic Violence and Victim Services Coordinator for the Office of Violence Prevention. I have been in this role since just a little bit after the half of the year of 2025. I stepped into this role. I've been with the city and the Office of Violence Prevention since September of 2024. Prior to that, I was a victim advocate for the Ohio State Trauma Recovery Center, working with those that have been impacted by violent crime with psychological therapy, case management, and victim advocacy, navigating court systems, law enforcement, reporting, that kind of thing. And I've done that for the better part of the last 12 years. So this is a field and a topic that is incredibly familiar to me, and sometimes I get lost in the fact that it's a common conversation, but in the community, it might not be. So I wanted to talk a little bit today. We've had a great way of understanding why we're here. I want to talk a little bit about the impact that domestic violence is having on our city. So this is going to be somewhat of an uncomfortable conversation. So if I can ask you to take care of yourself, if you need to step out, please do so. Make sure that you can feel your feet on the floor. And if you can't, wiggle your toes. Find a way to regulate your breathing. This can be an uncomfortable conversation. You may realize that some things that have happened maybe they weren't normal, though they've been explained to be normal. Maybe what you've experienced you can relate to up here, or you know somebody who has. So if you need to step out, please do so. If at the end of things you would like to connect with a professional or you're looking for resources, anybody that is speaking is able to connect you. So feel free to come up to me, come up to Glenn Harris. However we can help, we want to be able to help. We're going to see if this clicker works. Hey, it's working. No, it's not. Help. Can I get to the next slide, please? Again, take care of yourself as you can. Next slide. So we're going to start off with a definition. As we move to the next slide, I want to be able to define and have a shared language on what domestic violence is. So how do y'all, if you wouldn't mind, tell me how you define domestic violence? Okay. Physical or emotional put-downs, yes? Financial abuse. So here in the state of Ohio, domestic violence is specific to family member and household. So it is violence happening in the home with somebody you are related to or share children with. There's another bucket of violence, and that is intimate partner violence. Children are usually not involved in this. You do not share children, and you don't live in the same household. But it is violence occurring in a romantic relationship. It is important to talk about this because Columbus identifies both. They are the only city right now and the only police department that does. So understanding that domestic violence is usually kept with kiddos that are involved between two adults, or they involve a child and a parent or a step-parent. And then intimate partner violence, no children, and you don't have to live in the same household, but the violence is still occurring. The abuse is still occurring. And then strangulation. Everybody knows what happened in 2023, right? Strangulation became a felony. It had been a felony, but there were things that had to change within that law. Two things that changed. The pattern of abuse didn't have to be there. One incident of strangulation was now a chargeable offense. It didn't have to happen repeatedly. And the second change is you no longer had to lose consciousness. One of the first things to be able to tear apart a witness statement is, I don't remember what happened. But when you lose consciousness, you don't remember what happened. So with the strangulation law going into effect and becoming a felony, that loss of consciousness does not have to happen. It is an impeding of the airway. Strangulation is also something that occurs on the outside of your body. You're not choking. Choking is something you do internally. So shared language is important, and I wanted to be able to kind of give a foundation as to where we're going. So when I'm talking about domestic violence and intimate partner violence, that's what I'm talking about. Good to go? Any questions? Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm gonna try the clicker. Let's turn it back on. Hold on. Okay, we'll try it again. So what you see here are two pictures. This is data from 2022 to 2024. And what I want you to see here is that domestic violence touches every zip code in our city. I don't care where you live. It is happening in your neighborhood, next door. You know people right now. The data shows us that multiple people in this very room, with the amount of people in it, know somebody experiencing it or experiencing it themselves. The bigger the blue circle on the map that you see on the image on the left, the more incidences are occurring in that zip code from 2022 to 2024. I overlaid this with the police zones, so you can see what zone has the most cases. This is numbers, these are data sets that we are analyzing now. These have already been analyzed. 2025 is in the process of being analyzed. The biggest thing I want to point out is that domestic violence doesn't care where you live, what you look like, what you do for work, where you come to pray, where you grocery shop, how much money you make, what car you drive. It doesn't care. We're still not working. Okay, we're gonna see. This image is graciously provided to us by the Ohio Domestic Violence Network. And I bring this up in particular. ODVN does their data sets from June of 2024 to July of 2025. So keep that in mind. This data set right here includes half of 2025. I point this out because we have more men dying from domestic violence in that data set. There were 40 murder-suicides in this data set. We don't just have a domestic violence epidemic on our hands, we have a mental health crisis with our men. There we go. Over the last 10 years, ODVN does an amazing work serving the state. And they graphed out everything from 2016 to 2025. And in 2025, the state hit 157 fatalities from June of 24 to July of 25. That is an all-time record over the last 10 years. If we don't begin considering different approaches for serving families impacted by domestic violence, we will be setting records for all of the wrong reasons, right? So, you heard Deputy Lunsford speak to the numbers are coming down. Homicide numbers are down. We did it, Columbus. We are under triple digits. We lost 84 souls in 2025. What if I told you, oh, something didn't port over. I'm going to tell you these numbers. So while the homicide numbers are down in 2025, what if I told you that there were 31,000 plus Columbus police runs for domestic violence in 2025? How does 8,829 domestic violence reports sound? 787 felonies filed just by Columbus police. 3,470 misdemeanor DV cases filed by Columbus police. 538 strangulations filed. 538 victims of strangulation in 2025 identified by Columbus police alone. 84 homicides in total. 31 of them are domestic violence related. Almost half. So yes, while our numbers are down, and that's something to be proud of, we lost more people in 2025 than we did in 2024. In 2024, we had 24 domestic violence homicides. In 2025, we had 31. The 31st homicide happened on New Year's Eve. It went through the entire year. I know these stats are hitting home. I can see it on your face. Know that these stats bring tears to me every time I have to review them. But the stats only tell us a piece of it. Those 31,000 calls for help, that has an economic impact on Columbus, on Franklin County. When you look at the economic impact of domestic violence on Franklin County Ohioans, it's a total of nearly $130 million every year. Now, Columbus makes up 66% about of the total population for Franklin County. We're footing the bill for the majority of this. $86 million is what it's costing every year. An estimated $1.2 billion is lost in Ohio annually due to intimate partner violence and domestic violence. 3 of the largest costs of that $1.2 billion is physical health care for victims and survivors, loss of life, and loss of worker productivity. When survivors and perpetrators cannot go to work for a variety of reasons, that is costing Ohio. Domestic violence does not just touch the estimated 188,000 annual victims every year. If you think it isn't impacting you, I promise it is. It touches every single one of us. How many of you are born and raised in Columbus, Ohio? So it looks like majority of us get to call this place home. I'm not from Ohio. I have no family in the state. I have built my family here. And my family seems to be struggling to face an issue, and that's domestic violence. So we've talked about the stats, we've talked about the cost. So what's Ohio doing? How much are we spending to support this? In 2024, there was a study done on what states are spending to support domestic violence services. And our neighbor states are spending a decent amount. In 2024, Indiana was spending $1.31 per capita. West Virginia, $1.41. Pennsylvania, $1.71. Michigan, $2.39. Kentucky, $3.06 per capita. Anybody have an idea what Ohio's spending? Give me a number. What is it? $15 per capita? Okay. $5 per capita? Anybody else? $4 per capita? $9 per capita? Try 85 cents. We aren't spending $1. Ohio as a state did not fund domestic violence services until 2019 when Governor DeWine took office. 85 cents is up from 32 cents in 2022. We're going to talk a lot about how domestic violence occurs in our communities and how we are the resources, right? But some of this is also a state concern. So when we have $20 million for a biannual budget set aside for domestic violence, it sounds amazing. But when you realize that it's taking $129 million to serve the survivors, we don't have enough, and that's per year. When we look at resourcing for Ohio, for City of Columbus, it's going to take everybody in this room. We are the resource. So as you're listening to Glenn Harris, who's about to come up and walk us through what this looks like from a reentry space, from a prevention space, be thinking about how you can be the resource, whether that's for the kiddo that's in the house or one of the intimate partners involved. Male, female, men are victims of domestic violence every year. Statistics are telling us that women are primarily the victim, but that does not mean that it is not happening to our male counterparts, and that needs to be discussed as well. So, I've given some background on the impact in Columbus and in the state of Ohio. Now I want to be able to hand it over to Glenn Harris to talk more about the nitty-gritty conversation about preventing it, identifying it, recognizing where it comes, and then where we're going as a city to be the resource. Because the reality is that most individuals will come home from prison and jail. And the one thing that is the biggest risk of them landing back in jail is domestic violence. So if we want to reduce that recidivism rate, we've got to start having these conversations at home. Thank you for your time. I will be around the rest of the day. Mr. Glenn Harris, will you join me up front, please?
Did we figure that out?
I think so, maybe.
All right, how's everybody doing today? You guys hear me without that microphone? All right, well, let me start with some introductions. My name is Glenn Harris. Excuse me, I can't stand in one spot. I think they said I was OCD or whatever that word is. AHD or whatever. My name is Glenn Harris. I'm the Director of Prevention with the Ohio Domestic Violence Network. I want to start off by saying thank you to the Columbus Office of Violence Prevention for this initiative and doing that work. So if you guys can give them a round of applause, you guys raise your hand. Want to thank Second Baptist Church and Mike Davis for hosting this event. So thank you, Mike Davis, for having us out. It's not the first time I've been here. It's a couple years back. We were here having some conversations. This is a much larger conversation. And in fact, I see many faces in the room, many faces that I know, many faces I've worked with in the community over the last 20, 30 years. This is going to be a slightly different conversation than what you've seen me do in the past. We're going to change gears a little bit and start having a conversation about what we could do as a community to start changing what we're seeing out in our streets. Some of the objectives for today is we're going to talk about how domestic violence and incarceration are linked. I want to make sure that you guys are connected to some of the community resources that are out here for those of you that are impacted by domestic violence. And then make sure you guys are connected to some of the initiatives that we have locally in the state and nationally against domestic violence to prevent some of what we're seeing. Let's start the conversation by saying I want to be very intentional in pointing out the difference between the work that I do and the typical domestic violence work that you see. Typically, when we talk about domestic violence, we're thinking about intervention. We're reacting to the violence that we see. We do a phenomenal job with that. Phenomenal as a community, as a society. We do a phenomenal job with advocacy and wrapping our arms around the victims. I tell you what we don't do a good job of. We don't do a good job of turning around to that perpetrator and saying, brother, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Right? That's what today's conversation is about. This is about prevention. What are some of the things that we could do as individuals? What are some of the things that we could do as a community to change the culture of violence that we're seeing in our communities? When we talk about primary prevention, we usually approach it from several different ways, and this is using a federal model that they call the SEM, socio-ecological model. We approach it from an individual level. We approach it from a relationship level, so we're going to talk a little bit about healthy relationships today. We'll talk about it from a community level, and that's going to be largely the conversation we're going to have today. And then the last one is societal, and that's more dealing with the systems in place, and that's where we do a lot of the policy work at ODVN, right? I want to start off by reading this quote to you. This quote was by Justin Carter, a former employee with ODVN. And he says, "Men are not born violent. Some become violent as a result of the destructive beliefs and expectations about what it means to be a man. We must recognize the ways that dominant stories of masculinity have infiltrated our lives. We as men can choose not to perpetrate acts of violence and challenge those men that do. We can also challenge the ideas and attitudes that support violence." So I want to highlight that ideas and attitudes, right? Let's take a step further. I want to ask a question. We've got a mixed group here. So for all the women in the room, I just want to pose a question. Ladies, answer this question. As you were growing up as a young lady, in your teens and your 20s, you were taught some things as you went out and navigated the world. If it's a Friday night, Saturday night, you're going out with your friends, going out to the nightclub, what are some of the things that you were taught to protect yourself? Ladies?
I was always taught never leave a friend behind.
Come
Come together, lead together. Period.
together, lead together. What else? Come on, ladies. What else were you taught to protect yourself? Make sure that you're not violated when you're out in the evening. Grab your keys and use your keys through your fingers. What else? 100%. Pre-cell phone, always make sure you had change. So if you had to run to a pay phone or something like that, you can make a phone call. What else, ladies? If you have a drink, make sure it's always protected. Cover your drink. Nobody can put anything in your drink. What else? I heard something back here. Same thing? Okay. What else? Always be aware of your surroundings. Know where you're at and know who's around you. What else? What? Well, we're talking to the ladies right now, so I'm going to come back to whoever said that back there. Always back in when parking your car. I assume that so you can make a quick and safe escape if needed. What else? Let me have a couple more. I couldn't hear you. Safety in numbers, so don't travel alone. Have more with you, 100%. Make sure your phone is charged, right? If you are alone, take those ear pods out. Make sure you're aware and you're alert. You're aware of your surroundings, right? Park in a well-lit area. All right, hang on. Let's change shifts. That gentleman in the back, you got an opportunity to speak now if you like. Young men, fellas in the room. Same question. Friday, Saturday night, you're getting ready to go out with your fellas. What were you taught to protect yourself? Really? Okay, watch your drink. Keep your head on the swivel. Okay. Sit facing the exit. Carry a condom. All right. Just really quick. For you gentlemen here, you said always face the door, right? Can you tell me where that is, where that comes from, what that's about? Okay. And what was your comment?
Keep your head on swivel, meaning know your surroundings.
Okay.
So you just don't go in place and relax, looking, examining everything that's around you.
Perfect. I'm going to come back to these two comments here. I'm going to come back to the ladies really quick. Yo, yes, sir. I couldn't hear what he said. Stay out of bad company, 100%. Ladies, we just went through a list of things. You see all this list up here, all the things that ladies are taught to protect themselves, right? For the ladies in the room, can I ask one question? All these things that you were taught, who are you protecting yourself from? Guys hear that? They're taught to do all those things to protect themselves from men. You two gentlemen, just out of curiosity, you're keeping your head on the swivel. Who are you protecting yourself from? Men. You keeping your eye on the door. Who are you protecting yourself from? You see a theory here? The conversation we're going to have today is a triad. We're going to talk about the violence that men commit against women. We're going to come right here. We're going to talk about the violence that men commit against other men. And we'll talk about the violence that men commit against themselves. All right? Can you help me out? Go to the next slide. A lot of what we see and some of what we're seeing in our community is based upon dominant stories that we're told. When it comes to masculinity, we're told a certain set of standards about what it means to be a man. And as young men and boys, we have to navigate those rules, right? And stay in a very specific lane. The moment we step outside that lane, our masculinity starts to get challenged, right? I'm going to give you some examples of some of these dominant stories. Raise your hand if you've ever heard these things. Raise your hand if you ever told someone, say to a young boy, stop acting like a girl. Anybody ever heard that? Raise your hand if you ever heard a young boy say, stop crying like a girl. We've heard that? When we start putting these standards out there, first thing that we got to understand is we are diminishing the value of what womanhood is, right? We are saying, don't throw like a girl, don't act like a girl. Saying what to a young man? Don't be weak, right? We're planting a seed in that young man's head that women are weak. Don't be like that. We're planting a seed that women are soft. Don't be like that, right? We as a culture, we as a society, we as a community start planting those seeds at a very early age. When we talk about dominant stories, another big one is, we just talked about boys not crying, right? Men and boys not crying. Let me ask it, we're in our community, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask this question. One of our greatest actors, talents out there, Denzel Washington, right? Can somebody tell me one time in a movie you saw Denzel cry? The only time. Only time. And guess what? It was one tear. One tear. That's the Hollywood cliche. If you see a man, especially a black man, he's gonna let that one tear let you know he's got a little bit of emotion. And what's the first thing next? Just like Denzel in Glory. Man up, right? That's what we're taught. We mask that pain, we hide that pain, and that pain festers and starts to come out in very uncomfortable situations, let's say that. So this whole notion about boys and men not crying, essentially what it comes down to is emotion. Cutting off and shutting off emotion. We have to open the door for our young people to express full range of emotion. Not just anger, not just frustration. We also have to start championing our young men and boys. So when I was growing up as a young man, I grew up in the late 80s and 90s. There was typically 3 areas where I saw masculinity at its highest. Athletics, I saw that celebrated. I saw the men that were good with the ladies. I saw that championed. I saw the men who had a little bit of wealth, influence, power. I saw that being championed. And that's what we champion in our community. I can remember 6th, 7th grade. I'm in gifted and talented. I'm in spelling bees. Dad, brother, not showing up. Community, not showing up. Science fairs, community, not showing up. 8th grade, let me jump in some football. Now I'm the quarterback. Everybody's there. Everybody knows my name. Oh, well, I'm done with the spelling bees and the science fairs. You weren't celebrating me for that. Let's think about that as a community. What are we championing? What are we uplifting for our community, for our young men and boys? I want to take that conversation another step further. What we're talking about is social emotional learning and how our young men process their environments, right? And how they grow and learn to be young men. And I'll share with you, pop culture doesn't really help us a whole lot, right? What we see in the media doesn't really help us a whole lot. I'm going to share a quick story with you.
Mom, this elixir will improve my coordination. Mom, this elixir will improve my coordination, my posture, my vocal intonation.
That was me, 7th, 8th grade.
And I might even sprout a chest hair or two.
I remember when I showed up, mine gave me the bow tie, and I showed up for pictures.
First, you better sprout a chest. Steve, is that stuff safe?
Who knows?
Steve.
Hired a Steve Urkel, were you? Wanted someone better, did you? Someone cool. Well, through the teeth, over the gums, look out, stomach, here it comes.
You see in this clip here,
Steve, stop.
In like season 6, season 7.
Cool jeans taste like Snapple.
Cool juice. And everybody remember Stefan Urkel? My name's Stefan.
You okay?
Right? Think about what that was teaching us.
Steve!
One step further, I want to talk about large-scale media. I want you guys to think about this.
Steve?
Unfortunately, my clicker's not. Can you go to the next slide for me, buddy? Or next, so there should be another image come up. All right, see, pause right there.
Steve
Anybody
who?
recognize this guy? Well, that's technically not Captain
Steve
America.
Urkel.
Who is that? Steve
You.
Rogers, right?
No,
Okay, so I think my Marvel All right, so my Marvel
There is
fans,
no Steve here.
Steve Rogers.
I'm
He was
Stefan,
very
sweet
specific.
Stefan Urkel.
And quite honestly, what they recognized was leadership. He was highly intelligent. He had great leadership skills. He was high on empathy, high on a lot of things that men typically aren't celebrated for, right? But they say, yeah, it's not quite good enough yet. Let us give you this serum, and we can make you Captain America. Give you the strength. Give you the muscles, right? Let's go one step further. There's another guy in the same series. His name is, what is his name? Bruce Banner. That's his name. Bruce Banner. Dr. Bruce Banner. Dr. Bruce Banner is highly touted as probably one of the most intelligent people in the universe. In the universe. We don't celebrate him. Who do we celebrate? The Hulk. He's the Hulk, right? Turns green, smash time, He's the hero. Not the smartest guy in the universe. The puny human, right? The puny human. So even on a mass scale in pop culture, you see this repeated thing about masculinity. It's about strength. It's about aggression. And this is repeated in our culture, in our daily conversation, right? This is kind of how we raise our young men and boys. I want to remind you guys of going back in time. Think back 10 years, 2016. Obama's just leaving office, right? And we're at a time where, for lack of a better phrasing, the country's woke, right? We're pretty woke. This is where we see the beginning of the Me Too movement. We see the beginning of cancel culture. And we start to see very large cultural icons fall. Those that we celebrated. Those that we previously, unfortunately, protected. Yes, I'm talking about the R. Kellys, the Bill Cosbys, and that list goes on and on and on. Power, privilege being used, right? And I want to take a look at what we did at this national level, at this huge macro level, right? Think 10 years ago. All the things that were kind of okay and we know are taboo today. Think about it. There's a whole list of words. There's a whole list of, I give you a perfect example. 15, 20 years ago, two of our biggest hip hop artists, two of the biggest songs on the radio, one was 50 Cent, I'm a PIMP. You guys remember that? On the radio, being celebrated. 107.5, 106.3, played 12 times a day. Another song on the radio, Lil Wayne, lollipop. I'm not even going to say the lyrics, right? But our young people are repeating this stuff. When we talk about, we're only a generation or two removed from where our community celebrated and idolized pimp culture. Think about that. We celebrated it. Anybody tell me what pimping is in 2026? Somebody said up here, it's human trafficking. It's a federal crime. Something that we celebrated in our community. Don't act like I'm the only one. Y'all know Shaft, and y'all know, come on, the Superfly. We can go all the way down the list, right? We grew up with it. The Mac, right? We grew up with it. Cool Breeze. That's what we celebrated as a community. And we're only a generation or two removed from that, right? I want to jump forward a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about healthy relationships. So can I get some help with, yeah. Part of what we want to do is change this culture that, quite honestly, we're all in. We're all part of the culture. We're all help support the culture. We all uplift the culture, right? And just how at a large country scale, we've changed how some things are just not good anymore, we can do that in our own community. We can do that at a community level. I want to start with this. I'm going to show you how it works. Many men in the room right now may have on a t-shirt or undershirt, or very sleeveless undershirt, right? In our community, we call that shirt what? Right? Well, can somebody tell me why we call a shirt a wife beater? Anybody in the room? Can somebody tell me? 100%, yeah. And it's been depicted in media. Any other thoughts? I tell you, the work started back in 1956. One of our favorite actors, Marlon Brando, had a movie called Streetcar Named Desire. In that movie, he was an alcoholic, very abusive husband. A few years after that movie came out in 1962, this actually happened in Detroit, Michigan. There was a man who unalived his wife, and as the police were bringing the man out of the home, the media snapped a picture, and the caption was, wife beater, taken to something, whatever. And the word kind of got stuck in our vernacular, right? What I want to say to that is, though, language is very powerful. Language is extremely powerful. And just by that language alone, we make it okay. We normalize it, right? Think about that. If you're a young person, you grew up, you hear wife beater. Starts to sound pretty normal. I hear it every day, right? We can change that. So just for those in the room, I don't know if you've ever been to Walmart, Target, tried to buy one of those shirts. I promise you, it'll never say wife beater on the package. Never. It says tank top. I think in Europe it says vest, right? That's one step we can take as a community. Change the language. Let's not normalize it. Let's not make it okay. We hear, hey, young brother, hey, that's a tank top. We don't use that language, right? That changes at a community level what that looks like. Because now that young person thinks like, wow, I never thought about it like that. That makes perfect sense, right? All of you should have in your hand a document called red flag, green flag. Everybody got that? Turn your attention to the red side. I'm going to take you back to 2016 again. Any of you guys social media folks? You guys on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff? Yeah? I remember on 2016 opening up my Facebook, and I start seeing his breath stink. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Oh, his shoes dirty. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Them ain't red flags. We were making a mockery out of something that is really proven domestic violence theory, right? What you're looking at are a list of red flags. These are signs within a relationship, and we're talking about intimate partner relationship, that this may not be the best and most healthy relationship. You may find yourself in a situation, or you may see a relationship, and you may see one, you may see two flags, right? Take note. It's not time to just don't exit the relationship, right? But the more and more you start to see these flags accumulate, the more and more it's telling you it's time to step out that relationship. If you're seeing that in a relationship with a family member or a young person, it's time to step in and have conversations before those things turn violent, right? There are very simple things. Does this person respect you? Are you able to solve conflict respectfully, right? Very simple things. You'd be surprised how many times I've seen young people, it could be the smallest of things, and it just blows up to this huge argument. If you respect someone, I should be able to look you in your face and have a respectful conversation and find some sort of compromise or something, right? We have to start teaching that conflict resolution, especially in that intimate partner setting, all right? Let's take a look at the green flag. Here's some healthy signs. And we've got plenty of these red card, green cards. If you guys want to take some with you, feel free to take some with you. Share them with your young people. I encourage the church to keep some here on hand. But this is a very good tool and a very good key that you can use to gauge what relationships look like. All right? As we talk about healthy relationships, I did want to share this one little tidbit so we can kind of understand what we're seeing with some of our young people. Can you skip that slide ahead? Yeah, there we go. Say right there. What you're looking at on the screen is called a word doodle. Those of you that are not familiar with a word doodle, it's a collection of words. You can collect those words in a multitude of ways, but in this particular situation, this was out of the Baltimore, D.C. area. They surveyed all the 7th and 8th grade students, and they asked them to describe the types of games and activities they enjoy doing on a typically Saturday afternoon. So what you're looking at are all the verbs and adjectives that the young men use to describe their fun day on a Saturday afternoon. The larger that word, the more repeated that word was. As you look at this word doodle, what words start to jump out to you? As you look at those words, I think you'll start to pick up on a common theme, right? Think about that, young man. Saturday, you're going out playing football with the fellas, playing cops and robbers, stepping on the football field. Probably looks a lot of this, right? We're taught whether it's through athletics, whether it's through competition, but it's always battle. It's win. It's dominating, right? That's how we're socialized as young men. Think about that. Will you advance it one for me? Here's the same word doodle, but these are the words that the young ladies use. What words start to jump out to you now? Very, very different theme, right? Very, very different theme. And then we wonder why our young people struggle with relationships. Our young people, our young boys are being taught to battle, to win, to dominate. Our young ladies is like, well, where to love at? Learning two very different things. That's why our young men have to mature a little bit before we can handle real relationships. We have to overcome. And us as a community, it's our responsibility to help them overcome that. I tell you one big trick to that, what happens to miss in a lot of young people's lives, I'm going to give you one word: empathy. Teach your young people empathy. Teach your young people to care about others, right? I got this thing, I got 3 boys. My boys are 31, 21, and 11. And we have this thing what we call random acts of kindness. And I'll ask them, hey, what'd you do this week? They have to tell me 2 or 3 things that they did randomly for somebody that they don't know, right? That teaches empathy. I have to care for others, not just myself. And I think that's where a lot of our young people struggle, right? As we start talking about a community, I want to start talking about, we first have to understand the young people that we're engaging. Violence just doesn't happen out of a vacuum. And Sarah, if you could help me out with the 5D stuff. Violence doesn't just happen out of a vacuum, right? No young person, no older person just wakes up one day and says, hey, I'm going to commit all this violence, right? It's attitudes and beliefs that build up over time. We're going to have a quick conversation for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Miss Sarah's going to help me out about what we call bystander intervention and how we as a community can start changing a lot of what we're seeing. I want to start with this. First and foremost, if you see someone in an extremely dangerous situation, call 911. All right? You guys hear me? You see someone in a very dangerous situation, call 911. What we're going to talk about today are the things that happen before that violent situation occurs. To give you an example, let's say you have a young person who grows up in rural Ohio. Never engaged black people whatsoever, right? Finds himself at OSU as a freshman in college. Someone steals his phone. And based upon what he believes and sees on television, he goes and blames the first black person towards him, right? This is how violence escalates. It starts with an attitude and a belief. Based upon what he saw on television, based upon what he saw or what he heard, he had a certain attitude or belief. Then allowed him to act on a microaggression, right? What we're going to say today is the time to intervene in those situations is when we see our young people voicing very problematic attitudes and beliefs, right? And they'll openly say it because oftentimes they're looking for affirmation in that belief, right? They'll say things like, all these HOEs, right? Yo, whoa, young man. All women are not HOEs, right? We have to challenge that behavior. We have to challenge that belief. Where is that coming from? Why do we have that attitude? Why do we have that belief? I know in our community we got this thing that we call no snitching, and our young people and all that kind of stuff. So we're giving you guys a key on how we can handle those problematic situations. If everybody can take a look at this list, this is the 5 Ds. The first D in bystander intervention is what we call distraction. Distraction means you're seeing a problematic situation and you're causing something distracting to make that behavior stop. Let me give you an example. You're out at a nightclub, you see a guy's had way too many drinks, and he's festering and pestering a young lady, won't leave her alone. You come by, hey man, I think that's your car outside getting towed. He's like, oh, word. You see what I'm saying? He just got distracted. But that stopped. That young lady is safe, right? Nobody got in trouble. No police involved. We just wanted to stop, right? Number 2, delegate. I thank you so much for saying that. One thing about bystander intervention is your own safety, right? We want to keep you safe. So versus, like you said, creating a confrontation where now you're challenging, I'm just going to distract you a little bit, throw you off a little bit, all right? Number 2, delegate. This is where a lot of times we struggle in our community, and I want to help you guys with this. Delegate does not always mean punitive, right? Say, for example, I'm a young person, I'm on the playground, I see something I don't like. Versus going to get the teacher or going to get the principal, I can go get another kid that I know has a great relationship with him. Hey man, Mikey over there tripping. Can you go over there and talk to Mikey, get him under? See what I'm saying? Nobody got in trouble. No principal's office, nothing like that. But I delegated to someone who had a better relationship. Simple as that. Same thing can happen out here in our streets. You see a young person walking down the street mad, look like he about to go cause some trouble. Delegate to somebody who know that young person. Hey, John, I just seen what's name walking down the street. Look like you might want to go holler at him. Delegate to someone who's got a better relationship. Number 3, document. I'm going to take you guys back a little bit, 2020. This is height of Black Lives Matter, and we had a George Floyd incident. Everybody remember the George Floyd incident? You seen that video? In that situation, there were a lot of bystanders involved. You look at this list, they can't distract the police. They can't delegate, they are the police. Can't delay because somebody's life is on the line. And I can't directly get involved because if I directly get involved, I'm down there with George. The only thing I can do is document it. Record, document what I'm seeing so someone can do something at a later point in time. Those bystanders did the only option that they could. They documented. Number 4, delay. Delay means not doing something in the moment, but doing something later on. Maybe I'm at the nightclub, my buddy's had a few drinks, and I see some behavior that this is not cool. He tipsy. I know I can't talk to him right now. It ain't gonna make no sense. But that next day, hey buddy, we need to talk about you and that alcohol, right? I'm just delaying when I have that conversation. But being intentional about having that conversation. It could also mean having the conversation at the right time, right? Say you see some challenging behavior, it's a family get-together. You know as soon as you say something to Billy gonna get defensive and it's gonna be a whole confrontation, right? Just because people around. But I know if I catch Billy one-on-one Friday night when we watching a game, I might be able to have that conversation with him, right? It's just delaying to a time where you know you can reach that person. And lastly, it's just the obvious. It's getting directly involved. That's just jumping in, getting involved, stopping the situation immediately as you see it. Always not the safest, though, and that's why I saved that for last. Always not the safest option. Unfortunately, a lot of times we feel like it's our only option. So I wanted to make sure you guys understood the other options available to you. Sarah, I'm going to ask that you come up. We talk a little bit about some community resources. All right, so starting off, first off, I want to say thank you to the partnership with the Columbus Office Prevention, our Violence Prevention, and we are doing a community campaign that comes from a quote by Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou had a quote where she said, I did then what I knew then. Now that I know better, I do better. So the campaign that we're doing right now is know better, do better, be better. We've got T-shirts in the back. Tanea, where are you at? If you could wave, if you could just see Mr. Sheffield there. He's got T-shirts. If you guys are committed to being part of this work, I'm asking you guys to grab a T-shirt, right? That you're going to be part of this work, that you're going to help us educate the young people in our communities to do exactly that, to know better, to do better, and to be better. Please don't grab a T-shirt and you're going to be out there acting up. Don't do that. Last thing I need is somebody on the news with a know better, do better. Please don't do me like that, please. Please don't do me like that. Please don't do me like that. But we invite all of you to be part of this work. Many of you in the room are professionals and engaged. Many of our men in various settings in the community. Please have a conversation with me. I'd be more than happy to come in and have a conversation with those young men. Those of you that are part of other church homes, more than happy to come out and have a conversation with you all. If you're a part of a larger community organization, please have a conversation with Sarah about how the Office of Violence Prevention can support your team as well. So thank you guys for having us out.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? We talked a lot about, we talked about stats, we talked about prevention, we talked about a lot. Any questions?
Hi. Thanks for being here. Years ago, I worked for the state, and we got grant money to fund family violence prevention programs, and we did family because it included the children. And at that time, there were only 2 batterers intervention programs despite all the shelters. So batterers could also be women. So we basically only had 2 in the whole state, and I know one of them was Lutheran Social Services. I can't remember the other. But as far as focusing on prevention, has that improved as far as helping the abuser?
That is a great question. If you want to start, Glenn.
Absolutely. So that is something that we're looking at, and I will tell you, batterers intervention is a huge gap. Prior to working with the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, I did a community program called Father to Father, so I worked specifically with men and fathers in the community, and I noticed that as a gap then, so we're working to fill that gap. Unfortunately, that's not considered prevention, though, so that's after the violence has occurred, so we do call that intervention. So those are intervention services, and one thing I will tell you is, unfortunately, when it comes to federal dollars, it's more about the survivor and getting resources to the survivor versus spending money on those that have already offended, unfortunately. And we've got some reps from ODRC that'll tell you there's not a whole lot of money spent in rehabilitation and corrections. Let's just say that.
I can speak just a little bit to the prevention side of that work and what's happening. I know here locally, Franklin County Children's Services, the Center for Family Safety and Healing, the Office of Violence Prevention, ODVN, we are working on what's called the Safe and Together model, which is a national model of care to better support the whole family unit. So less punitive, more prevention focused, but that takes a lot to get all of those systems to move towards change at the same rate. Right now, we're kind of all scattered, but we're getting to that place to be on the same page and moving forward. So I think 2026, you'll see more prevention work happening from the local spaces here in the county and the city partnering together.
And one thing I do want to add to that, why it's so important when we talk about prevention work, unfortunately, domestic violence is learned behavior. And many of the men that we see are men who have been in homes where domestic violence occurred, and they're repeating that violence. I also, for a short time, work with sex offenders in the community. Same thing there. Many of them were abused as young men, never told that story, and then became abusers themselves later.
My question follows up the previous question about those intervention programs. I'm specifically thinking about that Duluth 40-week program. I've taught that for years. I'm retired now, but when I've gone around to mental health agencies saying, offer this, provide this, do groups, and I see a lot of pushback. A lot of agencies don't want to do it. And to the extent that you get an answer at all, it's, fearful about repercussions or fearful about liability. We got to get past fear, and, those are hard classes to teach, but they're really impactful.
I 100% agree with you, and for the last couple of years, I've been making the argument that it is prevention work, because I would like to prevent those men from battering someone else, is the way I look at it. I would tell you that there's a flaw in the model in that, unfortunately, the federal government, there's no grants, there's no money that supports that work. So that's why a lot of agencies won't do it. What happens is the cost of those programs gets passed to the participant. Then it's a matter of now I got to be a collection agency to go get my money, and a lot of agencies don't want to be in that business. So we have to rethink the model. I think for accountability, there still needs to be some cost to the participant, obviously, but I think there needs to be we need to rethink that model so that it can be done at a larger scale, 100%.
Yeah. My statement is actually twofold. One, I'm a former advocate for Fairfield County Prosecutor's Office. In Fairfield County, there are only 2 judges that deal with the felony offenses. We had a lot of domestic violence cases. The one judge incorporated in sentencing batterer's intervention. The other judge, which is the judge that I was responsible for cases at his court, had no idea what batterer's intervention was. He was ordering anger management. It had nothing to do with anger management. You manage your anger fine in other situations, but when it comes to your spouse, then it's a problem. So I think a lot of it is bringing awareness to what's actually available. This was a bench-sitting judge that had no idea batterer's intervention was a thing. So once he realized it, then he started incorporating it. So that's good. Mention that if you can in any of those situations, bring it to their attention. The other thing, my question was, are there programs in the institutions to prepare inmates that are very close to being released to get ready for real life experiences just prior to release in order to prevent that domestic violence reoccurrence?
100%. Ms. Ronnie, can you join me for a moment, please?
I was going to actually,
Okay.
because I'm the deputy director, I can do this. I can defer to Christo, who is over the Office of Victim Services. She can talk.
So luckily, to answer your question, we happen to have one of the directors of Ohio Department of Corrections reentry program with us, and she's going to directly answer your question.
And so we do have approved program, and so that is an 18-week batterers treatment program that's in certain facilities within DRC. And incarcerated people can be transferred there to that institution where it's being held to get that programming. So yes. It does not.
But I can speak to that. So in partnership with the 2 ladies you see behind you in the blue sweaters, in the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood, we work along with them, and we are visiting all the institutions, and we are working with the family. In fact, what we do is like a 2-day conference where the first day the men get all education, the second day they actually bring the family in and work as a family unit. So some of that, did you want to speak to that some more, Bernice?
As a holistic approach in the department, the Office of Reentry, Workforce Development, things like that, because if you don't have a job, if you don't have a place to live, you're angry, you're upset. I think I would be. So if we can prepare the men and women with jobs, with housing, with mental health, substance abuse treatment upon release, that includes the community being involved, even if you're not a professional, but just help. So with that holistic approach, we are doing our very best to do what we can to prepare the men and women and to keep them safe and not to go home
and I was just going to mention also that we partner with UMADOT, and we have a program called Creating Lasting Family Connections, where the families actually do come in, and they are part of the programming. So it is very important.
Awesome. For the rest of the community, I did want to say this. For those of you that are not familiar with incarceration and reentry process, I will share with you that incarceration is probably the most toxic environment a man can find himself, and there are going to be some behaviors he has to adapt in order to survive. We as a community have to have him unlearn some of those behaviors too. Sorry, go ahead.
There are just so many layers to this conversation that I would like to address, but since it's not my show, let me just say this. When we look at domestic violence, we have to also understand that there are children who are impacted by that. I was one of those. My dad killed my sister and I was injured. So when we talk about the bifurcation of restorative justice and allowing resources or identifying resources that will help ex-offenders, we also have to justify that and align those resources with how many resources are we providing for those families and for those children. We have mental health intervention on the reentry side. I was reentry North Region Director, so I'm empathetic. I was also the person who was responsible for identifying resources for those individuals. However, I feel that victims are re-victimized when their taxpayer dollars are now being afforded to provide that particular mental health intervention. Student loans don't have them, we have them, but they have all of these services. We have to find a way in which to balance the scales so that victims don't feel re-victimized. And I just finished an article on the bifurcation of restorative justice. I am for reentry, but I'm also for not re-victimizing the victim.
Really quickly, in terms of victim services, right? One of the big things I think we miss in our city is who knows that we have 2 trauma recovery centers that are 100% free of charge service for victims of violent crime. We have 2. We are the only city in Columbus to have 2. There's only 8 in the entire state. California has 49. But the problem is they lose funding every year because of whatever is happening above, right? But our victims and our kiddos, that's where they're able to get their help at 0 cost. Mental health therapy, case management, victim advocacy, all of the things. So when you're looking at policies and things to support or donate to, those are the things to look at, because without those federal funds, our victims lose. And if our victims are losing and they're not able to heal, when reentry happens, recidivism is going to go back up because they've got to go home, right?
Hi. As a formerly incarcerated restored citizen, I can attest to some of the things that were said. The environment in prison, like you were talking about, it's harsh, it's violent, and a lot of it's not so much fostered inside of the prison system. That's gotten a lot better, but a lot of those attitudes and beliefs that we're raised with that you were talking about are the things that are brought into the prison by those men, and that's the predominant source of a lot of that stuff, I think. She had asked about some of the programming available in there, and some of the ODRC programs were mentioned, but the ODRC's done a really good job at bringing in a lot of outside organizations to teach programs inside of the prison too. I saw Dr. Davis when I was incarcerated. Franklin County, Umadao has an excellent program led by Tim Robinson. I took part in that. Richardson, there's my brain fart of the day. And it's about family leadership and values and how to, like was mentioned earlier, take your time stepping back into those roles. You can't just step right back in and expect to be an authoritative figure in there. Those relationships have to be mended. They have to be, it's a process, just like he said. So there's a lot of really good outside programs coming in too that are becoming more and more available, and those are a really good thing.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I think it's very important that we do put a face to reentry and incarceration, so I thank you for volunteering your story. And I want to share with everybody in the room, we're at a very, very different period just as a country, right? So when we talk about dollars and the federal government and victim money, that stuff is getting cut. There's stuff out there it's called VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, was cut by tens of millions of dollars. Right? Domestic violence field cut by millions of dollars. So when we talk about resources and what's out there, the resources right here in the room, we're the resources. We have to change the conditions, we have to change the culture, and we have to change the conversations. because I'd much rather do the prevention work and not this reactive work after all this violence has occurred.
Hi. I'd like to say that I think that it begins at home, a lot of the problems we're having. And basically, what I see every day as a criminologist for 50 years and evangelist for the past 30 are constant reminders of the problems in the community. 4-letter words, dope and pimp, okay? You can be driving a nice car, you know, trying to inspire young folks to move up. Oh, you pimping. I said, young man, poping ain't easy. You know, you have to stop them right there. You know, were they going to knock me out or what? That's what we do. Right, and then, you know, you drive a nice car, which God blessed me with for doing God's work. And, oh, you pimping, home, you pimping. I said, man, look, no, we're poping and, you know, trying to change it. And that's the second oldest profession, you know, what you're talking about, pimping. And this everything good is dope. You come home to your mom from school, you got all A's. That's dope. You know, and kids are wearing their pants, you know. You could outrun the police if you pull them up, you know. And we got to start here with these basics. And if we can do that, we can really get somewhere. The language our children are hearing from their mothers, you know, from their neighbors, among their peer group. We have to let them know, OG, original gentleman. That's, you know, we got to start right there with the language, you know.
With your permission, I'm going to steal that one. I like that, OG, original gentleman.
Godbrother.com, you can always reach me. But I have a grandson, and he's had his pants sagging. And he's still mad at me, and this has been years ago. But I said, pull your pants up, you're going to go to jail. For what? I said, well, they're going to catch you because you can't outrun them with your pants sagging. I said, when you get to juvenile hall, I'm going to come and get you, you know. But you're going to be pulling your pants up so high, they're going to think it's a flood. And you're going to be moonwalking like Michael Jackson, keeping that away from them.
Yeah,
walking
you're
backwards.
100% right. It starts in the home. I think it starts in the community. And I'm going to steal that original, like you said, gentleman. Because one of the things I remember growing up as a young man that always stuck with me, my grandfather taught me this, and he was a very Southern gentleman, and it was the power of a handshake, right? Handshake, looking a man in his eye, right? Good, firm handshake. What we doing nowadays? We dapping up, what's up, right? It's going back to the fundamentals, right? It's going back to the basics.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I just think this is such a wonderful event. I appreciate it. This building is gorgeous. Thank you, Dr. Howard T. Washington. I am so impressed when I see pastors and faith leaders getting involved in this cause as a survivor. I want to say in the last 20, 25 years in the city, I've been a long-time resident of Dublin, but there was the Columbus Coalition Against Family Violence, which is now the Center for Family Safety in Healy. We had a huge network of faith and clergy leaders who used to meet regularly to answer this question. I was very excited about that, and then that fizzled out completely. And then we had I was very involved in the faith task force of the Ohio Domestic Violence Network. And that too has fizzled out. There are a core group of us sisters who keep trying to get resurrected, but it's not been happening. So what can we do, and what has the city done or seen with the Office of Violence Prevention with interest and initiative from faith leaders? I mean, do we have more Dr. Howard T. Washington in the city who really care about this cause? Because faith is a big part of this equation, not only for supporting survivors, but the faith community can have a lot of answers, even for the children, for the healing that's needed. So what is being done, and who is out there? I'm always trying to find, is there a church involved in this space? And for example, let me tell you, I'm a longtime member of Vineyard Columbus. It's a huge church. It has a community center. About 15 years ago, no, I want to say 20 years ago, when we were going to start a group, I was so excited. It got canceled at the last minute because all the pastors were not on the same page on this topic. So that's a huge issue. We don't have faith leaders who are all on the same page on this issue. So what is being done to engage the faith leadership, faith community? Thanks.
Irie Sherfield, Office of Violence Prevention, Strategy Manager. I would say we started off as an office tackling gun violence. And one of the things that in the beginning was maintaining a lot of those relationships as it pertains to gun violence. And I think as the mayor has tasked us with addressing domestic violence, and keep in mind, I think we're about a year in to like this is like as a focal point, is one of the things that I think doing events like this, we actually did a community conversation with New Birth as well, similar to this, centered around healthy relationships and domestic violence. And I'm gonna let Sarah Galoni, our domestic violence victim and services coordinator, kind of explain a little bit more what our office's goal is when it comes to citywide awareness when it comes to domestic violence, and partnering with the faith-based community.
We can't do this work without you. So if there's a space that we can come into and start to have those conversations and help, however, I don't need to educate the community as to what domestic violence is, but we want education about how to resource for it. And sometimes it's hard to sit there and want to learn about something or get involved in something if there's nowhere to go with it. As a victim advocate, I've told survivors of domestic violence no every day. No, there's no room at that shelter. No, I don't have the ability to get you a hotel. What am I doing? How do I help you? It's a no world. But if I have communities, if our church fellowships can maybe look at supporting victims of violence within their congregation, maybe then I can reach out. Having an amazing partner such as Second Baptist that's willing to let us have this conversation here, that is an incredibly courageous step forward, right? So some of it is also, we talk about reentry, we talk about how a lot of churches do reentry work. Not a lot of churches do victims work. Can we fix that? What congregation is willing to step into that fold? Because I'll show up however I need to. We do community conversations. I keep Glenn and I, he sees my face a lot. And we're gonna spend a lot of time together in the next several months. And so if there's a conversation, if there's a place for us to come into, please know that we're willing.
I happen to know Pastor Rich Nathan personally, so I'd be more than happy to spend some time up at Vineyard. Make sure you get my card before you leave. Our next speaker that I'm going to introduce here in just a moment leads the Eastern District Ministerial Alliance, I believe it's called. Mr. Mike Davis will speak a little bit more about it. But I know he and that particular group are very interested in this topic. This is not the first time they've invited me out. And there are many other leaders in the community as well that are very interested in this topic.
Okay, yes, I just want to say thank you all for, I just want to say thank you all for having this. It was very informational. I love how at the beginning you set this tone for self-regulation. I just didn't want anybody to miss that, because self-regulating yourself in moments like that and teaching other people how to self-regulate themselves is extremely important. I work primarily with youth, and I explain to them through lived experiences of what I've been through and some of the challenges that I face. Not having that backbone at home, so I know you mentioned like having family dynamics and things of that nature, but you also have to understand what happens if they don't have that family dynamic, and if they don't have a mom or they don't have a dad, similar to what I did, like who is the community that you can lean on. So a lot of what I teach when I'm speaking to different youth is how they can self-regulate, how they can see themselves from a different perspective, from a different lens, and how they can see themselves on the other side. Because many of the times, the way that the trauma affects their brain, they're stuck there. So we got to understand that when you're in that flight or fight situation, is that it's not always about, hey, this is what you got to do to get to the other side. It's like, no, let me help you regulate first so that your brain can start to release the correct chemicals. So when we start to approach the work like from that perspective, that's going to be a game changer. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't understand the power of self-regulation. So thank you for, allowing us, giving us the space to take a deep breath, let us know, hey, if you got to take a walk, take a walk. Things like that is so important, and to just piggyback on what everyone has contributed today. I just think that it's also important for us to understand some of the triggers that we may be experiencing so that we don't feel triggered in those situations and we back off. Because if we back off because we hear someone experiencing something that we're trying to suppress and we haven't dealt with it, then we're not going to be able to help them. So we got to understand that we have to address our own childhood trauma and the things that we went through in life so that we can show up vulnerable and authentic and transparent and have those authentic conversations with people. Because if we don't, then it's just going to be a ripple effect over and over again. And then how can we really do what we were called to do? Oh, yes. My name is Michelle Taylor. Yes, I am. Sorry, I was getting to that. Thank you, though. Yes, my name is Michelle Taylor, and I am available to speak with youth. I am an open book, okay? So I share a lot about how I was born addicted to drugs because my mom was out here doing everything under the sun, how I came out of that perspective of life, of thinking that statistics were who I was, and I stopped embodying that narrative, and I went on and start working with youth. I started speaking, working with at-risk youth that are in the juvenile detention centers, and also, finished with my master's degree in business entrepreneurship, and I teach students that you don't have to let those lived experiences define who you are. You can literally change the narrative. And a lot of students, they don't see their self on the other side. So anyone would like me to come and share my story with them, I would definitely love that.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm gonna be real quick because she triggered something. So before I came into this work, I used to be a probation officer. I started off with juvenile, and then I transitioned over to adult probation. And one of the things that that young lady said that really kind of triggered something inside me to speak was that how many probation and parole officers are in the room or work in that supervision space? Okay, nobody. All right, so the importance, I know Judge McIntosh is here. I used to be one of his probation officers in his courtroom. But that is the importance, I think, too, and is a lot of times overlooked, the importance of supervision when someone is coming out or someone who had just caught charges. Because that is one of the things when I was a PO, like Dr. T had talked about it, one of the charges I think that was pretty common amongst the people I supervised was domestic violence. If they were going to go back, that was the common charge. And in the supervision field, just having those conversations, and it's gotten so much better. It's no longer, how's your day going? Have you had contact with law enforcement? Are you working? And what's your address? It's a lot more substantive. We're doing, they're doing cognitive-based interventions and all that, but then also having those conversations about what's going on in the home. If I'm getting phone calls from a girlfriend, having that conversation, or significant other, having a conversation with your caseload, and also modeling behavior. As professionals, they are in the community, modeling appropriate behavior, modeling what it means to be a good neighbor. As where's he at? Kamal has said to me one day, being a good neighbor when you come out. So that is one of the things I think that we touched upon it, but like you really triggered it when you had said that. Every time we approached, when we were working with individuals in this space, looking at it from that standpoint as well. So I'm gonna let this gentleman speak.
I appreciate the young man. Calling me a young man, I receive it. You mentioned, or she mentioned, the faith-based community getting involved. At our church, whenever anyone brings something to me, as a pastor, my first question is, what does that look like? So for us to get involved, what does that look like? We've had conversation here, but what does it look like for us to get involved?
So I think the first thing to recognize is to understand that there's two separate lanes there. The first lane you're responsible for, and that's that faith and spiritual lane. The second lane, there's a set of professionals out there that's what they that's their profession, is advocacy, right? And supporting that victim. And I think first understanding that clear distinction, right, between the two. At the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, we do offer a community training. It's called DVAS, Domestic Violence Fundamentals. That is a good first step so that someone in your church can say, hey, I'm going to own this subject. I'll go get trained in this matter and make sure that we have the resources on hand to handle that situation. Within that training, it's probably about, I think it's a 16-hour training, so it happens over a couple days. They will have, they'll be victim informed, so know how to engage and talk to that person to get the information needed, then know how to navigate the various systems to get them all the resources that are available. And another step I want to take to that, as a community, we have this default thing that goes on in our head that when we hear domestic violence, the only resource that comes to mind is shelter. There are so many other resources out there besides shelter. Everybody doesn't need to go to shelter, right? There are situations, if Sarah's in a terrible situation, maybe she doesn't need to go to shelter. Maybe we just need to get her a bus ticket back to mom's house, right? Maybe it's, we need to make sure that she gets an attorney and a lawyer so that as she navigates this, she can make sure her divorce is taken care of, and that's not a financial burden for her. Like, there are financial resources to help them navigate the legal process of it. There are also resources to help this person get set up so that since I'm no longer in this partnership and I don't have the income I used to have, now we have some financial support so that you can get into your own housing and don't have to depend on that victimizer anymore, okay? So I really want to open up the minds of the community to say, shelter's not the only thing out there, all right? There are tons of resources. I get the stigma. Trust me, if I was a kid, 14, 15, I'm not trying to go to shelter with mom either, right? There are tons and tons of other resources out there.
Really quick, as we're passing the mic to the next question, I just want to answer in terms of, I want to give a comment to that. Victims are not parties to cases. They have no representation. The state of Ohio is represented and the defendant is represented. So when we're walking through a court process, having an attorney is huge. They can't touch a criminal case, but they can at least explain the language, right? And with a protection order or like a divorce, it is huge. I have walked way too many families through that process, way too many survivors who are pro bono, or they are pro se, and so is their abuser. So their abuser is getting to question them on the stand. Attorney fees are huge, so.
Just real quickly, I'd like to find out how resources are provided to the young people, because she touched on a very important point, and I call it undocumented trauma. When young people experience domestic violence, you just hold it in, and it becomes embedded in your psyche. And as you move through life, it doesn't leave you. It weighs you down. So I would like to find out how you are providing resources for those young people who experience what I call undocumented trauma, because there's no mental health intervention, but it travels with that person, and it does weigh them down through life.
Let's connect after this, for sure.
Thank you. What came to my mind is there's not been much talk about civil protection orders. As a former juvenile judge, domestic relations judge, we have one of the most enriched resource centers in Franklin County on the 6th floor of 373 South High Street. We have a domestic violence center. They will walk you through how to do a protection order. We have victim advocates. And as far as children, this child was involved with Franklin County Children's Services. They have all the resources for children for trauma intervention and trainings within their programming as well. So there's so many layers that he's really only talking about intimate partner violence. He's not talking about all the types of domestic violence. We have a increase in violence where grandparents that are raising their grandchildren are being victimized in their own homes. That is also domestic violence. Child abuse is domestic violence. So we're only talking about intimate partner violence at this stage. So when you go to this training that's available, they'll be able to give you all the different layers that are involved, because our seniors are really being victimized by their families. So when you're also checking your community, checking your church, you also need to inquire about your senior citizens that might have grandchildren living with them, still have adult children living with them. There's financial coercion in domestic violence. So there's so many different layers that this 2 hours cannot cover, that training would be invaluable for someone in your congregation to take and bring back to the church.
Thank you, Your Honor.
One last one. I promise you, this is the last one. Here we go. Come on, Brother Towns.
Yeah, it's more of a resource instead of a question. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Londell Towns Sr., and I specialize in trauma and grief, specifically targeting those 24 and under that have experienced domestic violence in any case, whether a perpetrator, victim, or one that was vicariously experienced it while in the home. Two things I would love to just put into the space. Thank you for your comments, my sister. First thing, I love words, right? So first off, if you take anything from this conversation, know how are you defining domestic violence and how the state you're in is defining domestic violence. That will begin to give us branches to get creative of how to approach this thing. One thing I am a little disappointed that I keep hearing over and over is this funding piece. I keep hearing money and funding and funding. I'm pretty sure if some of us put our heads together and our minds together that money would not be a solution, but it would be a tool for the solution. The way we attack this DV is we do MAP therapy, M-A-P. We use music, we use art, and we use play. And we're very, very good at it. Very, very good at it. We do it in the environment of N-E-T. That is natural and environment therapy. We go into the homes. We go into churches. We go into schools. Wherever they're experiencing that trauma, we have specialized technicians, registered behavior technicians, clinicians ready to serve you and your agency. Not do the work for you, but teach you how to do the work and be better you. Whether you're individual or an agency, we've partnered with ODRC. We know Brother Tim, so we want to thank you for the work, Brother Irie, and what you're doing. Amazing presentation, sir. And I would like to encourage everyone. It's Saturday, and we're here. It's Saturday, and we're here learning about DV. Thank you, sir. N-E-T-M-A-P. N-E-T-M-A-P. Lifesaver.
And that's it.
Really quick, Sarah, before you pass it over. I want to say this really quick. About, 2006, 2007, so 20 years ago, when I first started doing this work, I was at the Urban League. Mr. Francis, you probably remember this. You were on the board at the time. I came up with this idea, and I just wanted to get out in the community and do some work. And I started a fatherhood program called Father to Father. We had a great partnership with Franklin County Child Support. We're able to work with some men. And I just wanted to recognize Judge Terry Jamison. Just, if you guys could give her a round of applause. I have to tell this story. So I work with men, and for those of you that don't know, in our community, we're intimidated by that judicial system, and many of us aren't going to engage that judicial system, right? And I used to always help guys fill out their paperwork and go get visitations so they could be active parts of their children's lives. And I remember being in a courtroom with one of the guys, and I'm like sitting in the front there, and like I'm encouraging him, just tell the truth. Everything will be taken care of. The court wants you to be involved. You're going to be involved. And I remember the mom and the attorney. They're putting up all these objections, and the attorney's saying all these things, and the judge sees me, and she goes, "Mr. Harris, is there anything that you could add to this situation?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." Told this gentleman's story, right? And at one point, the attorney gets appalled. He's like, "Who is this guy? Is he an attorney?" No. Just an advocate, right? But so thank you for giving the program that platform and allow us to work in the community at that level. So thank you so much.
I am passing it over to our very gracious Pastor Washington. Or Mike. And Dr. Davis.
Thank you. Hey, let's give a big hand to our presenters today. Sarah, Glenn, who are phenomenal. Dr. Lunsford, who is here. Fantastic conversation. To God be the glory. He always does more than you can think, ask, or imagine. And that was true today. Obviously, we need to have more conversation. This is a great start. Any event, whether national or international, is local somewhere. Why can't the start be here? We can change the way things are done. I just have to say to our pastor and moderator, thank you for allowing the space. To the elected officials in the room, Judge Jamison, Judge McIntosh, soon to be elected officials, Charity Martin King. Thank you for being here. Hey, the people that advocate for you. The people that advocate for you. The people that advocate for you. All right. So I want to thank the Office of Violence Prevention, the City of Columbus, the RX Foundation, the Eastern Union Missionary Baptist Association. And so let me share with you, you can join the Eastern Union Missionary Baptist Association Layman Auxiliary. You can Cash App the Layman at the thingamajig up here on the screen. I don't even know what it's called, but I know you're supposed to do something with it. It's called, hashtag, my bad. Cash App, okay. My IT, my daughter Tristan is not here, so my IT knowledge goes way down when she's not around. But you can Cash App, put Layman Auxiliary in the notes. You can also support the Layman Auxiliary by making a donation. You can put your donation in the box affixed in the sanctuary here. You can also join the Layman Auxiliary. I have a application in the back at the Troy wing. You can fill out and you can make a $5 contribution to become a member of the Layman Auxiliary. This event was supported by the Office of Violence Prevention, the RX Foundation, enabled us to do this today. To do future events, we do need support. All right? So I get an amen. I thought I heard Dr. Sample say amen. All right. Listen, it's been a great time. The cars in the parking lot, people are going to see you coming out, and they're going to ask you, what was this, all about? And so I want you just to get in your mind's eye sort of what today was about. Today was about saving lives. Today was about changing a narrative. And so as we prepare to leave, I would just like to ask you all, if you could just please stand to your feet. Just take a moment. I just want you to close your eyes. You're in a safe space. I just want you to close your eyes. Now take your right hand, place it over your heart. Open your eyes. Would you open your eyes? Feel your heartbeat. Open your eyes. All right. From the place you are standing now, I want you to turn completely around, 360 degrees. 360 degrees. You should be facing me. If you're facing the back, you did it wrong. As I said, people see your cars in the lot. They're going to see you walking out. They're going to catch glimpses of your faces, and they're going to ask you, what happened over at Second Baptist on January 10th, 2026? What were you guys doing? And you're going to say, we had a discussion that brought me to my feet. My eyes were open, my heart was touched, and I was turned completely around. Have a great and wonderful day. To God be the glory. We'll see you. Take care. Bye-bye.